Hey Channel 9, welcome back to the next video in our Visual Studio 2010 and .NET Framework 4 week. Today we are here with Vishal. Vishal, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you work on.
Hi everyone, I'm Vishal Joshi. I work as a program manager with Visual Studio Web Developer team. And so when you guys create a new website or a web application, you should probably remember us. That's what we do all the time.
Cool, so let's go ahead and dive right in. When it comes to Dev 10, I'm a developer out there using the new Visual Studio 2010. What kind of things are you guys working on to make our lives easier as web developers?
Actually, as a web developer, you should be super excited because the future of the web is really awesome, and the amount of investment that we as Microsoft are making in web development is just phenomenal. So just to take a lapse at what all are we working on. In Visual Studio 2008 timeframe, we introduced a bunch of investment around Designer. We did a lot of work around introducing multi-targeting, which allowed you to use various different framework versions with VS 2008. Continuing in the trend of all those investments in Dev 10, we are focusing a lot more on code-focused scenarios where we would allow you to increase your productivity tremendously just by the new features that we'll talk about. We are also supporting Silverlight to a great extent and in a very nice way in the next version of Visual Studio. MVC, which is a super hot favorite of everyone. We are working on that from the tooling standpoint, and there is a lot of great tooling features for MVC. Hopefully we'll get some time to talk about it someday. We also have invested and put energies in dynamic data, which allows you to quickly create a web application just by pointing it to the database and like customize it the way you want to. So we have a lot of investment in that area too. And these three essentially, Silverlight, MVC, dynamic data, are what we call as out of bands. Essentially they ship and they continue to improve in tooling perspective outside of the primary Dev 10 umbrella, so that you get innovations on them much faster. But apart from that, the actual Dev 10 release also, which we are working on, is a super powerful release. We are doing a lot more in that space. And the key areas of investment in that space are around, as I talked, code-focused scenarios, so making you very much more productive when you're typing code. So for that, we have taken people's hot favorite jQuery, and we have provided first-class IntelliSense support on jQuery inside Visual Studio. And we have worked with jQuery team themselves and did the annotations for IntelliSense and stuff like that. If you use VS now, you'll probably see how nice it is. So that's pretty exciting.
Fantastic.
We are doing a lot more work in JavaScript IntelliSense too. So in VS 2008, we introduced JS IntelliSense. In VS 2010, we are taking it to the next level. It is it's much more faster, much more reliable. It can give you IntelliSense within your file itself. So if you're typing something, if you create a function, you want to get the IntelliSense of that function right next to it, you'll get it, and lot more robustness. You wouldn't see it lagging, and it was a little bit slower in VS 2008. You wouldn't see that anymore. So it's pretty powerful. So that's another big area that we are investing in. Again, we are continuing to invest in CSS space, designer space, and we are moving more and more towards supporting standards. So one of the things that we are working on in Designer is supporting CSS 2.1 selectors, and which will now allow you to like identify a tag with its ID and see the results right inside the Designer right at the same time. So that is a pretty exciting feature for people who are CSS junkies and love to use Designer. So that's great investment over there. And apart from that, my personal favorite features is HTML snippets, HTML and markup snippets. Now C# and VB always had snippets, like property. You do prop tab and you get a property. But for web developers, your life is around HTML, ASPX, pages, and stuff like that. How many times we type run at is equal to server?
Yeah.
It means we realize that that's painful. So we've got this wonderful feature in which you can just say TB tab tab and it will create a text box. You do list view tab tab and it will create a list view. So you could almost gain so much productivity if you master this feature that you probably be loving Dev10 just because of this. It's really, really powerful.
So I can create my own that tie to my own CSS classes and everything
actually,
like that.
You can create your own snippets too. That's true. So you can actually go ahead and say your business application is having some kind of snippets, like you do some set of controls together all the time. You can create a custom snippet and tap tap, it will come up.
Very cool.
Fill in the right stuff. So it's pretty powerful. So that's one of the other most interesting things that we are doing. And apart from that, the one which I'm working on and I love it a lot, I'm sure people will also, is web deployment, which is also a very huge investment.
Yeah.
And those are the primary big things that we are working on.
Cool. So I understand you actually have some stuff you can show us on web deployment and what's coming with Visual Studio 2010.
Yes. We have some stuff to show on web deployment. So to give you some background before we get into the recording, is that web deployment has never been simple. Means I joined Microsoft a few years back, and before, when I used to work in different companies, we used to almost block out a day after our development was done, testing was done, to make sure we deploy well. And for people who are using Microsoft technologies all over, we've got your IIS, SQL Server, ASP.NET Visual Studio stuff. People must be thinking, why doesn't Microsoft do something to make our life better? Right? So that is the motivation factor. We want to make sure that that all these products, which work so well independently, like IIS and ASP.NET and SQL Server and stuff like that, are difficult to put together. And the idea is that after Dev10, that would be a history.
Right.
We hopefully hope that that you would never face that problem. So the key pillars in web deployment space that we are working on are number one, we are introducing a concept of web packaging. And web packaging, you would imagine it sounds a little bit fancy, but it's essentially a zip file. A simple zip file which will contain all of your IIS settings, your database, everything, which you can take it into USB drive, take home, develop at home, give it to your peers, put it on community, do whatever you want with that package, and you can just almost build an ecosystem around this. So that's web packaging. We've got one-click publish, which will show that it will be actually possible to just click one button and get your entire web deployed. It's too fancy to believe, but it's really awesome.
Yeah.
And DB deployment, which is a very interesting space also. So we are also including DB deployment as part of your web deployment process. And then finally, people's hot favorite, which is I have to change my web config file from my development environment to production environment. My connection strings of database change, all these kind of things change, and there is just no good way. I remember my days when we used to create elaborate documentation, and we as developers hate documentation, right?
Yeah.
So, but we used to create like documentation after documentation explaining people, go to IIS, change this setting, go to web config, change this connection string, so on and so forth, right? And that's when you gave that to your system administrator, they looked at the document and they goofed up, right? So essentially your web was in trouble.
Yeah.
But the idea is that all this will become a part of history. The system administrators will love you and you will love them. That's
very cool.
So with that, let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and show you some stuff.
Awesome.
Okay. So what I wanted to show is that firstly I wanted to take a very big website, which we've always heard that Microsoft people take default.aspx simple sites and try to do. Like people live in a complicated world. So this is our humble effort to just represent a complicated site. It's approximately 1,300 pages big site. And what we are going to do is that we are going to try to, number one, create a web package around it. So we're going to try to understand what the concept of web package is, right? So first, let me go ahead and introduce you to a new tab in Visual Studio, which is called as a Publish tab. So when I go to a publish tab, you will see that this tab is specific to configuration, which means that for active debug release configurations, I've got settings over there which I can save. A few settings to know about this are items to package or publish. There would be three options over here: only files needed to run your application, all the files in your project, and all the files in your folder. Now you would use this particular feature primarily to do things like create a package for community. If you want to take your source code and package it, then you would choose that option, and the package created would be something which you can push it to community, right? Then you have an option of excluding files from app data, which is like many times people have SQL Express MDF files in their project, but when they go to server, it's SQL Server. So they want to exclude those files when they go to production. That's what that helps us doing. Exclude generated debug symbols will exclude your PDBs from packaging. We highly encourage you that even if you're in a release mode, you create PDBs, because if you want to debug your released website, that's the only way you can really get to it, right? So produce PDBs, but don't necessarily publish them. That's what that will allow you to do. Then we've got a new technology paradigm. Basically, MS Deploy is a technology from our friends at IIS, and this technology was initially developed to migrate IIS 6 to IIS 7, so the site from one place to another. But then we thought that, why just allow server administrators to use the benefit of it? Why not take it to developers and make it more powerful? So what we are doing right now is that MS Deploy essentially allows us to create something that we call as a source manifest, which will have a list of items that needs to be included inside the package. And once the source manifest is created, then we call MS Deploy saying, here is the manifest, go ahead and create a package. So it creates the zip file, right? Apart from that, we also create something that we call as a destination manifest, which allows you to modify your settings that are going to go at the production server or staging server. And then finally, we also produce a command file, which you can just run, and it would install your web package, right? So those are the primary elements. So when you see MS Deploy settings over here, what that essentially means is that it is allowing you to select a bunch of items which are going to go inside your package, which you can see over here has got IIS settings, has got app pools, and bunch of other things. So next thing that you see are the package settings, which essentially allows you to create MS Deploy package as a zip file, or it can allow you to create it as a folder also. So zip is really good because it's compact, but some people want to put the folder structure inside their source control so that they can do diffing and stuff like that on that. So that's why there are two options, zip or a folder structure. Then you have an option of specifying where the package is going to get created. You have an option of saying what is your destination IIS application path, and you have an option of saying where is the physical path of it. So you can see over here I'm saying I want to get this to my default website at mywebpagestarterkit.net 4.0. And here I'm saying that the physical path of that thing is at this particular location, serial_world_apps_deploy. So in order to create the package, it's really easy. What I go ahead and do is I right click on my project, I go ahead and say package, and I hit create package. So it basically goes ahead and starts creating a package, and you'd see that the package is created. So it's substantially powerful from performance standpoint. We did not have that good performance on a lot of other technologies that we were using earlier. And now let's go ahead and see how our package looks like.
And you said that was for like 1,300 files?
Well, I have to confess, the thing is because and this is a feature actually, I had created a package earlier, some days back, so it keeps the package inside your OBJ directory. When you repackage it, it is intelligent to find out what changed since last time.
Ah, cool.
Right, so this is very typical, right? You're incrementally publishing to your web, so you always want to create packages which are complete, but based on the destination, it would just update the right thing. So the package actually just incrementally updated with the changes that I had, and that's why it was super fast. But still, it is fast.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
It's very fast. Then the next thing is let's look at how the package looks like. So obj debug, and let me go ahead and try to refresh this, and you will see that there is a package node now. If I'm going to try to explore different aspects of it, then you will see that I have got the source manifest, which we talked about, the destination manifest, which will allow you to control how you want the destination settings to look like, and the command file, right? So with that, what I would want to do is that I want to go ahead and show you how my IIS looks like right now. So this is my IIS, and what you would typically do is that you would typically go ahead and give this package to your system administrator, right? And your system administrator would do something very similar. He would be on the server, he would get your package, and he would try to deploy the package, right? So what we're doing over here is that I've got default website, and you can see that these are the sites that I have on my box. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to try to run the administrator command prompt. So in the administrator command prompt, I'm going to try to navigate to the MS deploy install location, which is what your server admin would do. You can do that too in case you want to ramp up your QA box or something like that. These are the steps that you would do. So I'm going to go ahead and try to change to program files, IIS, Microsoft Web Deploy. And now I'll go back to my site. I'm going to take this command file. So let me open up the properties of that command file. This is the path to the command file, and I just go ahead and paste it right over here. So that's my command file, and now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to hit /t on that command file. Now the /t command means a trial command. And what the trial command will do is that it will run the entire stuff in a trial mode and tell me how many files are going to be impacted by this change, right? So let me hit that. You will see that we generated an MS deploy command, and it is actually right now running, and it's basically telling me what all files are going to be modified and how. So you can see over here that it said that there are 1280 files which are going to be modified, right? So this is an approximate count because we are just going through the stuff and we are trying to find out how is the deployment going to look like. So when I go ahead and hit /y, this is the time when it is actually executing. So the meta point over here is that your admins can actually look at what is going to happen and then actually execute the scripts, right? So I'm going to go ahead and try to execute it. Now it's actually going ahead and installing everything that we just now looked at, right? And you can see that it's really fast, right? Means it was really fast in doing that. If you had the package on the local box, it would do that soon. So now it is 1280 changes which were actually made. So let's go back to our IIS server, and you can see that right now I do not have a deployed site. This is my original site. One of the other points that I wanted to mention is that I went ahead and modified my default document to be login.aspx. Many times you change your default documents to whatever you want to, and these kind of settings were the ones which you had to tell your admin to go ahead and make, right? Bunch of IIS settings. The meta point is that this is not just one IIS setting, but any IIS setting you would have to ask your admin to do, versus now when I'm going to go ahead and refresh this, you will see that we've got my web pages starter git deploy site already deployed. And if I'm going to go ahead and try to browse to it, now do note that this is the first time that this site is running, and it's not a pre-compiled site. So it's going to take time because we are pre-compiling the site on the fly over there. But you would notice that as soon as it is done, the default page that was open is actually login.aspx, right? So the IIS settings and your actual package and everything just got deployed in a click, right? So that's how powerful it is. But for many people, what we thought is that taking this package, running the command line and stuff like that is not necessarily the best choice, right? People want to go to their hoster scenario where they want to push it to their public domains and stuff like that. So we wanted to make sure that their lives are also easy, and that's where our next thing comes into picture, which is one-click deployment, right? So let us look at this. What we have now is that when I right-click on the project and I hit publish, you will notice that we've got this new dialog, which is pretty sleek, and it is completely brand new as compared to what it was earlier. We have a concept of a profile which allows you to create and save your settings so that you can use them over and over again. and it has got different publish methods: MS deploy publish, FTP, file system, and others. We would recommend MS deploy publish because of all its benefits, that it can take your database and IIS settings and everything together. Regular publish just used to take your files. Everything else was manual, right? So here what I have is that I have a pointer to my destination server, which is right over here. Next, and I think this is the Windows Server 2008 box where we have the server side setup of the MS Deploy. And what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to go ahead and create a site or an application called as PDC site/JSON, just for you. And its physical path is going to be C PDC site JSON, and I have given my credentials, right? Now let me go back to that PDC server and show you how PDC server looks like, right? So at the PDC site, again, to refresh it and confirm, there is nothing under the PDC site right now. If we go to the PDC site folder over here, you'll notice that there is nothing over here as well. And what I want to do is that I want to go ahead and try to publish. So with this information published over here, I just go ahead and try to hit publish, and you will see that the publish has started. And we'll keep monitoring this guy and see, you can now see that the JSON folder is getting created on the server. And if we just keep refreshing this, then you probably now see that you've got a JSON site which is also getting created, right? And so it is, and let's go back and look at it. And the publish has succeeded. Now this is indeed 1300 pages, right? Which went just across the wire, and you saw that it took like absolutely no time.
Yeah, very quick.
Right? And not only that, I think what is also interesting to note, so let us try to browse to that particular site and see how things happen. So HTTP, if I remember the port correctly, which I hope I do, and we created a site called, application called JSON. So it's again loading for the first time. It's pre-compiling on the server. And what is also interesting to note is that right now we not only moved the files, but we also moved IIS settings, which is what we will see in a second. That not only, and you can see that login.aspx is again the primary page of your application. I did not browse to login.aspx.
Cool.
Which is very powerful, because now you can take IIS settings to a remote box within a flick of a click, right? Interesting pieces, where would you use this is, say you have your QA box, you just fixed a bug, you want your QA to see it immediately, click a button onto the QA box, get it running in a second, right? So it's pretty powerful. You can use this in a hosted environment as well. And what I have right now is that if you notice, what we did was that I actually had configured all these things. When I went to publish, I essentially first right-clicked on my web pages starter kit, then clicked on publish, and then clicked on publish over here again. Now this is 3 clicks, my friend, right?
Yeah.
This is not 1 click. Right? So, but we wouldn't settle down for 3 clicks, right? So we had to do 1 click. So here is a 1-click toolbar for you. All your profiles which are saved are right over here, and you can basically just hit this one button. And with that one button, the publish will be fired, and your site will be updated on the server.
Cool.
So that's the 1-click publish for you.
Nice.
So that, and I think that with that I would want to quickly move down to the database part of things.
Yeah.
To just show you how the database deployment works.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So when we did the package creation and also the 1-click publish, right? We have this special tab now for you, which is called as Publish SQL. And this tab is a way by which MS Deploy will take all of your databases and take it across. So what I would do in this situation is that I right now have got no database connections, but I can add a database and say call it as my web pages starter kit database. And if I have that database, then I would add that as a connection. I can give a description so that I can basically tell myself later on what is the state my database is in, whatever notes you want to get with it. And then I have an option to automatically script the database. So if I click on that option, you will notice that a bunch of things show up. This is the connection string, which allows me to give the connection string of my local server from which I want to pull out the data. I have an option of taking either the schema or the complete database, which is schema plus data. And I can choose whether I want to schema qualify my scripts or not. And once I do that, then the script will get generated and will get added to the package. And you will see that that's why we have got this auto-generated scripts added to the source scripts grid. Now that is not necessarily just enough, because you might want to do a bunch of activities before and after the data generation. In that situation, we allow you to add your custom scripts over here. So I can actually have see my web pages starter kit / blah.sql. So if I had this file present over there, then I could go ahead and run that file also along with the automated scripting. And I could go ahead and choose to make this up or down so that I can order them in which order they need to get executed. And some of the other very interesting turnouts of this particular behavior is that you might put, many people in an agile world today are trying to create their SQL scripts for every release that they create, which everyone does. But what people are doing is that they are creating an up script and a down script, which means that you would have one script to move up and one script to move down, right? And you would create one for your every release. So let's say you're releasing in a monthly cadence, then for January, February, and March, you would have Jan up, Feb up, March up, and March down, Feb down, Jan down. Now let's say you are in this state right now where you're in March, right? And you want to suddenly you realize that my Feb release was something which my customers liked more, March release is not so good, I need to go down. In that situation, you would have all these scripts listed over here, and what you would do is that you would just uncheck, you would check the March down, and then you would just uncheck everything else,
right?
Which would allow you to move your database from March level to March down, which will take you to the February level. So that's pretty cool. All that thing is supported. You can also specify the destination connection string over here, which will allow you to finally decide where the database is going to go. So that, and then after that, when you do package, publish, whatever we talked about is essentially the same. So that doesn't really change. And so that is database publish, will be super powerful. I would love to show you, but you know, we want to go ahead and see the web config transform also.
Yeah.
So saving this for later, talking about web config transformation. So what is web config transformation, right? Invariably, your development environment and your server environment is going to be different, right? So you have got your server names which might change, you might have log locations which might be different, connection strings are going to change, bunch of things, right? And till date, it was not easy to do all these changes. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and show you the new model of web config transformation. So in web config transformation, you will notice now that we have introduced web.debug.config and web.release.config, which just by looking at that, people are really happy that we finally thought about it after years. So my apologies that we didn't think about it so long. But the web.debug.config and web.release.config are essentially the transform files which are going to apply to your original web config, and then the new web config is produced at a different location, which essentially then goes into the package that we saw, that will go onto the destination that we saw. All that kind of stuff happens after the transforms are applied. So let us see how that really works. So I've got this complicated web config file from blogengine.net, right? And I have web.debug.config and web.release.config. Now, here you will see that I'm running under the debug mode. So that's the reason we will try to modify the debug config, because that's where the changes will apply. So let us go back to the debug config, and you will see that we have got a new namespace called XML document transform. This is a new namespace which will allow you to do transformations. And one of the things that I want to do right now, just for illustration purposes, or let me even go down to the release mode, which will probably emphasize the fact a little bit more. So I'm going to transfer to the release mode and go to web.release.config. And in web.release.config, you will notice that I have got the web config transformation. The first transformation that you see over here is remove attributes debug. This is under system web compilation. So when you go back to your config file, And let me try to split this vertically so that you can possibly see a lot more. So my web config file, if we go to system.compilation, you will notice that the debug element is true over here. That's something which is very typical that you want to remove when you go to production. You're not in debug mode anymore. So the transform is remove attributes debug. Now other things that you would want to modify, and I'm going to show you a few other transforms that we have, are things like connection strings, which are invariably going to change. And again, closing this back again over here. Right now, if you notice that I have got a connection string called local server over here, and the value of it is dummy, right? What I want to do, in essence, over here is to take the connection string local server and change its connection string value to say web config transform is here to save us, right? So let's say that's a new connection string, and we have a concept of the transform, which essentially allows you to change the web config file. And then we have a concept of locator, which allows you to find the right node to make the changes. So that locator over here is match, which is going to, what it says is that match on the name, which is right over here, match the name local server, and transform it is replace. So when I actually produce my new transform config file, it's going to find the one with local SQL server and replace it with the new value. So these are just two transforms. I just want to run this and show you how it works, and then quickly sum it up on how a bunch of other transforms and locators are available. So for that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to try to create a package. And what we need to know is that the web config transforms are actually intermittently produced in the obj/configuration folder. So if you're in release mode, it's in release. If you're in debug mode, then it's in debug. And inside that, there is a new web config file which is placed, which is what we are going to look at right now. So now if I open the obj folder, I also have release, and I'm going to try to refresh it. I have package as well as I have the web config file. So if I open the web config file, you will notice that my connection string was modified, and I can see web config transformation is now here to save us, right? And you will also notice that in my system.web compilation node, I no more have the debug attribute.
Very
right?
cool.
So that's how, in essence, at a very high level, the transformations work. It's not that we just have got these replace and match transforms. The transforms that are available are remove attributes, which will allow you to remove more than one attribute. You can do comma separated attributes. We've got a transform which is replace, which will replace everything. Apart from that, we've got transforms like set attributes, which will allow you to set an attribute, and if an attribute is not present, it will insert it for you, right? Then we have got a transform called insert, which will allow you to insert a new node inside your web config. We've got a transform for insert before and insert after. So when you do authorization kind of scenarios where you need to insert it at the right location, not above or below a node, you would use a transform like insert before or insert after, right? We then also have got transform which will do remove. So if you want to remove a complete node, you could do that too, right? And as far as the locators are concerned, I talked about match, which will match on an attribute name, right? Apart from that, we also have got locators like condition, in which you can give XPath predicate, where you can say where X is less than Y and Y is greater than Z, whatever kind of combinations that you want, you can give that too. And one of the most powerful ones is XPath, where you can actually just give an XPath to the entire node and just say apply the transform, remove attributes or something like that, which is super powerful for advanced users who are doing XPath. They can just write an XPath. So all in all, web config transformation rocks, in my opinion.
That's very cool.
If I was outside Microsoft and I would have got this like 3 years back, I would have been so much more happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that we've taken a lot of time, but hopefully this was interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
All that we're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you for your time, Vishal. It's been an absolute pleasure, and until next time, we'll see everybody later.
Okay. See you.